On a rainy night, a worn pickup truck pulled up in front of a quiet veterinary clinic. Inside a metal crate hidden beneath a tarp lay a litter of fragile German Shepherd puppies. But one noticeably smaller was barely clinging to life. Milka, a devoted veterinarian, cradled the tiny pup in her hands, unaware that he would lead her into something far beyond a simple rescue. When the name Joey was gently spoken, a bond was born, and a hidden secret in the shadows began to stir. What truth is Joey carrying that no one in town ever expected? Stay tuned to uncover this emotional and powerful story. Outside the veterinary clinic, the night had settled into deep silence. The moon hung over the silver-gray sky, casting shadows across rows of pine trees that whispered in the wind. The clock hands had long passed midnight. Most houses in the small town were dark, except for the warm yellow glow spilling from the clinic window where Milka Torres was still diligently poring over her ledgers. A sharp, abrupt sound echoed from outside, followed by the glare of headlights sweeping across the glass door. Milka jolted, frowning slightly. At this hour, only emergencies would arrive. She rose, pulling her white coat closer around her, and stepped out to open the door. A worn silver-gray pickup truck idled on the steps. Raymond Cole, the owner of a renowned local dog kennel, climbed down. The tall man had a rough-hewn frame, a face as cold as carved stone, and gray eyes that gleamed with cautious calculation. Behind him, a large metal crate was covered with a tarp, faint whimpers escaping from within. Milka stepped closer, her greeting soft and carried on the chill night air. "You're bringing something this late?" Raymond silently pulled the tarp back. Inside lay a litter of German Shepherd puppies, only a few weeks old. Their fur was short, their eyes flickering as if half asleep. Some huddled together, trembling from the cold. A shiver ran through Milka as she hurried forward to inspect them. Her gaze stopped on a puppy noticeably smaller than the rest. It lay curled in the corner of the crate, its breath as fragile as a thread. Its dark fur was wet and matted eyes barely open, yet still glinting with a faint, stubborn spark. Milka knelt, scooping the tiny life into her hands. "It's so small," she whispered, pressing the fragile body against her cold palms. Half the size of its siblings, its frame gaunt ribs protruding as though every ounce of strength had been drained. Raymond shrugged casually. "That one's weak, can't handle winter. I just brought it for you to look at. The rest you can handle the paperwork as usual." Milka met his cold gaze, finding no trace of pity, only calculation. She tightened her hold on the puppy, feeling its rapid heartbeat, a delicate yet defiant pulse. "I'll keep it," Milka said firmly. "I'll take care of it." Raymond arched an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before vanishing behind a half-smile. "Suit yourself. But don't expect much." He turned away, unloading the other puppies to his assistant. Milka let them handle the paperwork, her full attention on the small creature in her arms. She placed the tiny pup on the exam table, quickly drying its damp fur with a soft towel, then switched on a heater nearby. Warmth spread, bathing the trembling body in a gentle light. Carefully, she prepared a small bottle, attaching a syringe to feed drops to the puppy's mouth. At first it only weakly twitched, but gradually it swallowed the first drops, clinging to life with quiet determination. A relieved smile touched Milka's lips. "Well done. You'll have a name. From now on, you're Joey." The name came naturally, like a promise. Joey stirred slightly, opening its eyes a fraction. In the glow of the heater, the pupils reflected a fragile but unwavering spark, making Milka's heart ache with both tenderness and admiration. Outside, Raymond finished the paperwork, glancing at the window. He saw Milka cradling Joey's hands, tender, as if holding treasure. A fleeting, inscrutable expression crossed his face. Indifference, or perhaps a hidden thought, before he called his assistant, hastily packed up, and drove away. The engine noise faded into the night, leaving only Joey's soft breaths and Milka's anxious heartbeat. She sat beside the table, gently stroking the puppy's thin fur. "Joey, you'll live. You have to live." That night, Milka didn't sleep. She set a small bed beside her desk, scribbling notes while watching every breath. Whenever Joey twitched, she soothed it with gentle murmurs. The flickering firelight cast amber streaks across the walls, sheltering both human and dog. Outside, wind swept through the trees. In the distant darkness, a vehicle paused briefly on the empty road, headlights flashing before disappearing. But Milka didn't notice. For her, the world now consisted only of the tiny puppy in her arms, a fragile spark of life, igniting hope. In the flickering light, Joey opened its eyes once more, a faint but steadfast glow reflecting there. Milka gazed back silently, acknowledging that this was only the beginning of a long journey. As dawn crept in, weak sunlight filtered through the clinic window, touching the room still warm from the heater. Milka rested her head near the small bed, eyes rimmed with exhaustion from watching Joey all night. The puppy's fragile breaths hung like threads between life and death. She stirred gently, touching the curled-up form wrapped in the soft blanket. Joey shivered, breathing in uneven little gasps. Milka pressed her hand close, feeling life persist. Relief washed over her, yet fear followed. She knew even a moment's lapse could snuff out this tiny life. She rose, checked the heater, adjusted it to a gentle warmth, and prepared the feeding bottle. The clear syringe, filled with milky sweetness, carried a faint, comforting aroma. Milka took a deep breath and brought the tip to Joey's closed lips. At first, the pup did not respond, lying limp with tightly shut eyes. Milka's hands trembled, but she persisted, letting each precious drop touch its tiny tongue. After long, tense moments, Joey twitched. A weak swallow sounded like a bell tolling life. "Well done, Joey," Milka whispered, eyes glimmering with small triumph. She continued, drop by drop, slowly, carefully. Joey began to swallow more steadily, tiny legs jerking with effort. Though fragile to Milka, this was nothing short of a miracle. In that moment, memories of her childhood surfaced. Once she had found a fallen bird wing, broken, abandoned by its flock. She had nurtured it, though it ultimately didn't survive. But its struggle had left an imprint on her heart. A lesson that sometimes all one can do is accompany nurture and give love, leaving the outcome to fate. Now, watching Joey drink each drop, she sensed the difference. Those half-open eyes still glimmered with the will to hold on. A long day passed. Milka hardly left the clinic. Every 2 hours, she checked the temperature, prepared milk, and dried Joey's tiny body. Whispered prayers flowed from her lips, gentle sounds like streams reaching the ears of the fragile little life. By the second night, Milka noticed Joey moving more. The little pup weakly tried to lift his head, his eyes half open, hazy as he looked around. For a fleeting moment, the firelight caught his tiny pupils, making them sparkle like 2 shards of clear glass. Milka choked back her emotion, holding him close to her chest. "Keep fighting, Joey. You're doing so well." Tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes, not from despair, but from being moved by the courage of such a tiny life. In the days that followed, the clinic seemed to shrink into a world of its own. A world shared by just 2 beings, a human and a small dog. Outside, winter winds carried the bite of the cold, but inside, the warmth of the fireplace. And Milka's steadfast care filled the room with an unusual gentle heat. Every time Joey trembled, Milka wrapped him in her arms, letting her warmth flow into him. Every time he weakly stirred, she whispered to him as if speaking to a friend, telling him stories of her childhood, of the peaceful town, of simple dreams she had yet to pursue. Slowly, that fragility became a strange source of strength for Milka herself. She realized Joey didn't just need her to survive. She needed him to find meaning in every passing moment. By the 4th night, as Milka dozed off in her chair, Joey stirred, opening his eyes wider than before, his tiny paws touching her hand, as if calling to her. Startled awake, Milka met that bright, clear gaze directed at her. Her heart tightened and then blossomed into uncontainable joy. "Joey, you can see me." In that instant, Milka believed hope had triumphed. Though challenges lay ahead, those crystalline eyes promised a new journey where a fragile life would grow stronger with each passing day. The small veterinary room tucked in a quiet corner of town became a sanctuary of its own. The golden glow of the fireplace pushed back the winter darkness, and the soft, steady breaths of a tiny life filled the space. Since Milka decided to keep Joey, every hour, every minute had fallen into a new rhythm, one of patience, love, and watchful waiting. Joey, the pup who once curled up as if ready to give up, now responded more clearly. His tiny body still trembled, but whenever Milka brought the feeding syringe near his little lips, twitched eagerly, and his fragile legs kicked as if asking for more. Each movement made Milka's heart ache with emotion. One night past midnight, Milka sat at her wooden desk watching Joey sleep soundly in his small bed lined with woolen blankets. The ticking of the clock blended with the crackle of the fire. Every sound seemed to slow, giving way to a moment of serene peace. Milka rested her chin in her hand, staring long at his tiny form. Joey shifted slightly, his breathing steadier than before. Her mind wandered back to the moment she first lifted Joey from the metal cage. She could still sense Raymond's cold gaze, leaving the other pups behind, a shadow lingering in her memory. But against it shone Joey's faint, fragile light. A light that tethered her to responsibility and to hope that could not be put into words. She murmured as if speaking to herself, "You're so small, yet you're like a little warrior. Joey, you make me want to be stronger than ever." The following days, Milka devoted herself entirely to Joey. She brought her paperwork to the small desk beside his bed so she could work while keeping an eye on him. Sometimes mid-note, she would pause just to make sure he was still breathing steadily. Each morning as the sun rose, the first thing she did was place her hand over Joey's chest, feeling the fragile yet resilient beat. Long nights passed, sleepless and exhausting. Her eyes sunken from fatigue, but always alight with faith. Whenever weariness threatened to collapse her, a tiny, barely audible stir from Joey would awaken her, as if jolting her back from a dreamless sleep. One early morning, as Milka dripped milk drop by drop, Joey lifted his head more than ever before. His small eyes opened fully, clear and bright like morning dew. He gazed directly at her, and in those eyes Milka saw a reflection of herself, her tired face brimming with love. Her heart clenched, then a soft laugh escaped. "You can see me now, Joey. I know you're trying." That moment was more than a sign of survival. It was confirmation that an invisible bond had formed between them, a connection beyond words, tied through glances and heartbeats. From then on, Milka began talking to Joey even more. She shared memories of her childhood in sunlit Colorado fields, where she dreamed of one day building an animal rescue center. She spoke of hardships of veterinary school struggles, of times she almost gave up. Yet looking at Joey, she relived that drive, the urge to fight for a life, however small and fragile. Joey listened in his own way, through bright eyes and the faint twitching of his ears whenever Milka whispered. Each pause seemed to make him wait, his tiny paws tapping the air, urging her to continue. And she did, letting her voice become lullabies that soothed him to sleep. One night, wind howled outside, rattling the glass door. Milka soothed Joey to sleep, thoughts drifting to the harsh realities beyond Raymond's cold schemes, the dark secrets of the kennel that townsfolk whispered about. Anxiety flitted across her mind briefly, but looking down at Joey, eyes shut, breathing steady, the fear vanished. She understood then that Joey was not merely a tiny pup clinging to life. He was a symbol of resilience, a reminder of why she chose this path. More than that, he became the tether keeping her grounded amid doubt and worry. That night, Milka laid a hand on his small bed, whispering, "Joey, you make me believe that everything is worth it. I'll stay here with you until the sun rises." Outside, the winter cold still bit harshly, but inside the fireplace burned bright. Within Milka's embrace, Joey gradually reclaimed his rhythm of life. Every drop of milk, every tender gesture, every story woven into the quiet night became threads binding them together in a sacred connection. As the pale moonlight crept through the window, Milka rested her head on the edge of Joey's bed, letting her eyes close for a fleeting moment. Joey shifted, pressing his tiny head against her finger. An invisible thread had tightened, anchoring them together. A human and a little pup, ready to embark on a new journey side by side. The early days of winter passed, and the small veterinary clinic stayed lit late into many nights. Milka had grown attached to Joey in a way that had become indispensable, from feeding him drops of milk to whispering softly whenever the little puppy huddled seeking warmth. Joey remained fragile, yet his vitality slowly grew clearer, and each time his bright eyes met hers, Milka felt certain that a miracle was quietly taking shape. Yet one quiet morning, as Milka was changing Joey's blanket, she suddenly froze. Her fingers brushed against a fine scratch stretching from his shoulder down to his tiny rib cage. She had previously thought such marks were merely from rubbing against the metal cage he had been kept in, but this time the wound felt different. The skin was slightly swollen, and along its edge lingered a strange, faint scent. Milka leaned in closer and inhaled softly. This smell was unlike dirt or dried blood. It was sharp and pungent, reminiscent of days back in veterinary school, the scent of tranquilizers mixed with preservatives. A chill ran down her spine. She sank down onto the floor, her mind a whirlwind. Why would a tiny puppy bear traces of chemicals in his body? Who could have done this? Raymond, the cold man who had brought the litter on a rainy night, flitted through her thoughts. His emotionless gaze seemed to explain his indifference, but it did not explain why Joey carried the scent of drugs. That evening, Milka shared her concerns with her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Edith, who had lived in the town for decades. Sitting on the porch, turning a cup of tea in her hands, Mrs. Edith stared into the distance. When she heard Raymond's name and the mention of the litter, she nodded slowly and sighed. Up at the north end of town, there's an old warehouse no one dares approach. People say every night you can hear barking, sometimes harsh, sometimes pitiful. But strangely, by morning, no dogs are ever seen around. Milka frowned, her heart racing. The story sounded like folklore, but when she connected it with the chemical scent on Joey, a dark puzzle began to take shape in her mind. In the days that followed, she became more observant. Every time Joey woke, his eyes sparkled with life, yet there was a flicker of vague terror. Loud noises made him cower and tremble, as if recalling a traumatic memory. Milka stroked him, whispering to reassure him. Yet she could not hide her own growing unease. One afternoon, while taking Joey into the backyard to bask in the sun, the wind carried sounds from the north of town. In the quiet expanse, Milka thought she heard rapid barking, mingled with the clash of metal. The noise lasted only a few seconds before abruptly stopping, but it was enough to make her heart sink. Joey immediately lifted his head, ears, pricked eyes fixed on the distant horizon, letting out a weak, high-pitched whine. Milka held Joey close, gripping him tightly. She realized their bond was more than mere affection. Joey had become a mirror reflecting the secrets buried around the town. Somehow this little puppy was leading her into a vortex whose end she could not yet see. That night, in the quiet of the clinic, Milka opened her notebook and began writing the first notes about unusual signs. She recorded the scratch, the scent of chemicals, and Joey's reactions to the northern noises. Though mere fragments, they formed a clearer picture. Somewhere someone had harmed this litter. The desk lamp cast a narrow pool of warm yellow light onto the blank page. Joey curled up in his little bed, his tiny legs twitching as he dreamed. Milka looked at him, her heart softening. She knew she could not rush yet. She could not ignore it either. The rumors of the mysterious warehouse and the terrifying barks echoed relentlessly in her mind. The town, once peaceful, now felt like a torn canvas revealing hidden darkness since Raymond's arrival. Milka had never imagined herself drawn into such matters. Yet Joey's gaze, the chemical scent, and the wounds on his small body planted the seed of suspicion deep within her. She stepped to the window, gazing north, where shadows swallowed distant rooftops. Joey stirred, looking up at her, his eyes gleaming as if sharing in her thoughts. Milka nodded softly, silently promising, "We will find the truth." Outside, the wind blew icy gusts, carrying unfamiliar sounds from afar. In Milka's heart, a new feeling emerged, suspicion entwined with determination. Joey had started as a fragile spark, but now he had become the tiny flame, illuminating the questions burning in her soul. Since Milka first noted the unusual signs on Joey's body, her mind had found no peace. Every time his clear eyes met hers, she felt an unspoken urge to delve deeper into the town's mysteries. Yet along with that drive came a series of strange warnings, making her realize that some force did not want the truth revealed. That day, Milka decided to stop by the town's largest general store to ask about Raymond and the northern warehouse. While waiting to pay, she casually brought up the subject with the shopkeeper, a middle-aged man named Harris, known for knowing the town's stories. "Mr. Harris, have you heard anything recently about Raymond Cole?" Milka asked, keeping her tone casual. Harris looked up, his usually cheerful eyes clouded with hesitation. He cleared his throat and whispered, "Girl, it's best if you don't pry. The warehouse up north, it's not a place for decent folk." His unfinished warning carried a clear caution in his gaze. Milka thanked him and left the store feeling even more unsettled. That afternoon, driving back to the clinic, she sensed something unusual. In the rearview mirror, the headlights of another car trailed her persistently, though the road was nearly empty. She swerved onto a narrow side street, and still the car followed. Her heart raced, hands gripping the wheel. Only when she signaled into the small lane leading to the clinic did the vehicle slow, then turn and vanish into the darkness. A shiver ran through her. Milka got out hurriedly, carrying Joey from the passenger seat inside, uneasy. In the warm clinic, Joey nestled into her arms, seeming to sense the tension. The next morning, while preparing to visit an elderly cat patient, Milka discovered a long scratch along the side of her car. The silver paint had chipped away, revealing jagged steel beneath. Nearby were marks, as if someone had intentionally scraped it with a sharp object. Her heart sank. This was no longer coincidence. It was a clear warning. She swallowed hard, glancing around. The street was deserted, only the cold wind rattling the bare trees. Joey sat in his basket wide-eyed, and Milka felt as if the little puppy could read the worry in her heart. That evening, after returning from her shift, she bent down to open the mailbox. Among the envelopes and bills lay a single folded piece of paper. It had no sender, just a few scrawled cold lines. "Stop. Don't ask about Raymond. Stay away from the warehouse." Milka's hand trembled as she picked up the thin sheet, heavy like a stone, pressing against her chest. She stood still for a long moment, listening to the wind whistling through the porch and the echo of her own footsteps in the night. She carried the paper to her room and sat at the desk, her gaze falling on Joey, curled up in his small bed. The fire in the hearth blazed warmly, yet her heart felt weighed down. From the strange scent on Joey's fur, the rumors of the mysterious barking, to the tailing car and the anonymous note, everything tied together into a chain of threats. Milka knew that silence could keep her safe. But the little boy's eyes made it impossible to ignore. Each fragile breath had already taught her that courage could rise from the weakest place. And now she felt she had to summon that courage and move forward, even as darkness lurked close. She gently stroked Joey, whispering, "You survived, Joey, and I believe we'll uncover something. Something they're trying to hide." Outside, the night wind hissed through the cracks, dry leaves rustling like invisible footsteps. Darkness no longer stood still. It had crept closer, prowling right outside the porch. That night, Milka's clinic was wrapped in an unusual silence. Beyond the walls, the east wind swept violently across the glass, carrying with it long, eerie whines. Milka soothed Joey into his warm nest, trying to push away the anxiety pressing on her chest. In recent days, after the anonymous letter and the trailing car tension had been her constant companion. But this time the fear was no longer just a premonition. A strange sound echoed. Milka jumped. It sounded like a window being nudged, followed by a shadow darting past the light of the hallway. Her heart raced. She held her breath, listening to the unfamiliar footsteps, invading the space she thought she knew so well. Just as her hand reached for the phone to call the police, the door swung open. Not an intruder, but a tall man moving with agility as though familiar with the darkness. He was accompanied by an old dog, its dark fur grayed around the muzzle eyes, sharp yet dignified. "Don't be afraid. I'm here to help," the man said in a calm, firm voice, steadying the door. Milka froze, heart still pounding. Moments later, a shadow streaked past the rear of the room and vanished out the half-open window. The sound of glass clinking faded into the night. The man glanced at the dog, who darted to the window, sniffed, let out a short growl, and returned. "He's gone," the man said, nodding at Milka. "I'm Daniel Cross." Milka looked at him, torn between caution and relief. Daniel's frame spoke of someone hardened by rigorous training. Broad shoulders, decisive movements. Yet his eyes held a deep, somber weight, carrying memories of battles long past. He crouched, running a hand over the dog's head. "This is Ranger, a former K-9 operative. Retired now, but still has the instincts to protect." Milka nodded softly, her gaze softening as she met Ranger's calm brown eyes. Joey lifted his head from the bed, staring at the new four-legged friend. Ranger approached carefully, sniffing, then gently licked the little pup's ear. Joey trembled but eventually pressed against Ranger's thick chest, letting out a small, relieved sigh. Milka's heart warmed amidst the tension. Daniel moved toward the desk, his eyes scanning the folder and the anonymous warning still left there. He furrowed his brow. "I take it you've been asking about Raymond?" Daniel said slowly but firmly. "Raymond Cole is no ordinary man in this town." Milka clenched her hands, eyes flickering with caution. "What do you know about him?" Daniel sat down Ranger, lying beside his legs, alert. He rested his elbows on his knees, eyes distant. "I investigated Raymond back when I was with the unit. Reports linked him to illegal animal trading using abandoned warehouses to hide his operations. I followed the trail, but the case was abruptly shut down. Pressure from above forced me to back off." He stared straight at Milka, his voice heavy. "Here's what I learned. Anyone connected to Raymond ends up in trouble. He has dark connections and will eliminate anyone who asks questions." Milka shivered, recalling the tailing car and the long scratch on her side. Every detail suddenly clicked together, the danger now crystal clear. "Why me?" she whispered. Daniel tilted his head, determination glinting in his eyes. "Because you have Joey, and I believe this little one escaped his grasp. As long as Joey survives, that secret cannot stay buried forever." Milka hugged Joey close. The pup looked up at Daniel, eyes reflecting the lamp's light, as if understanding the weight of his words, confirming all her suspicions. For a fleeting moment, the tiny clinic became a strange convergence. a young veterinarian with a fragile pup, a retired operative and his old K9 companion. Each life bore its own scars, yet together they stood in that moment. Daniel stood scanning the room, stopping at the scratched window. "He'll come back," he said, voice low. "And next time, he won't let you get away so easily." Ranger's stretched ears, perked eyes toward the night as if sensing danger. Joey nestled into Milka, yet his gaze remained bright, reflecting a fledgling trust. Milka inhaled deeply, looking at Daniel. "So what do we do?" Daniel was silent for a moment, then offered a rare, resolute smile. "We'll uncover the truth. But first, we prepare." Morning sunlight filtered into the small clinic window. The recent tense days felt heavier, but in that sunlit room there was a gentle moment, letting Milka forget the darkness waiting outside. On the soft rug by the hearth, Joey took wobbly steps. Tiny legs trembled, each unsteady step threatening to topple him. Yet each time he almost fell, he managed to stand, eyes wide, glowing with a strange light, both fragile and resilient. Milka sat nearby, hands ready to catch him. Each fragile breath of the little pup resonated in her heart like a miracle. Who would have imagined a creature so weak, barely surviving his first night, could now stand tall on his own 2 feet? She let out a soft laugh, but tears quietly welled at the corners of her eyes. Her hand gently stroked the fragile little back, and she whispered, "You are my little warrior, Joey." Joey lifted his head, his clear eyes looking straight at her, his tiny tail wagging lightly. Then he took a few more unsteady steps, faltering but determined. Each small movement, each step forward, warmed Milka's heart. In that quiet moment, she realized Joey was teaching her something important. Strength doesn't come from size, but from the courage to stand again no matter how small or weak you may feel. All day, Milka hardly left Joey's side. She prepared milk, feeding him drop by drop with a syringe, wiped the milk from around his mouth, then placed him in a warm, knitted blanket. Joey nestled into her lap, his little ears twitching with each breath. At times he slept peacefully, his tiny belly rising and falling steadily, radiating a simple yet priceless sense of serenity. But beneath that calm, Milka was painfully aware that danger still lurked outside. The shadow of Raymond had never left her mind, and the warnings, the scratches, the eyes watching in the night, all felt like an invisible cord tightening around her throat. She hugged Joey a little tighter, whispering as if making a silent vow to herself. "No matter what, I will protect you." Joey wriggled slightly, nudging his nose against Milka's chest. In that instant, it seemed as if he had understood her silent promise, his eyes wide and pure, yet brimming with a strange determination. Milka choked back her tears, feeling as though she was gazing into the soul of a tiny being who carried unimaginable courage. That evening, Daniel stopped by, bringing Ranger with him. The dogs greeted each other in their own way. Ranger lowered his head and gently touched noses with Joey, who cautiously stepped closer, tail tucked but wagging. Daniel smiled, sitting down beside Milka. "He's making progress faster than I thought," Daniel said softly. Milka nodded, her hand lightly resting on Joey's head. "Every step he takes feels like a reminder to me. If Joey can push through, then I must be strong too." Daniel fell silent for a moment, his eyes distant, recalling the years he had faced harsh missions with Ranger. He understood well the feeling of finding courage in a four-legged friend. After Daniel and Ranger left, Milka stayed by the fireplace. Outside, darkness covered the town streetlights, casting pale yellow glows onto empty streets. Inside, only the crackling fire and Joey's steady breathing filled the room. She bent down, whispering a vow. "Joey, you're not just a life I saved. You are family, a part of me I will protect to the end." Joey looked up, his round eyes shining in the firelight. He snuggled deeper into her embrace, his gaze innocent yet strangely resolute. A crescent moon hung low in the sky, its faint silver light spilling over the empty streets. Milka pulled up her jacket collar, her heart racing as she followed Daniel along a trail toward the outskirts. Ranger walked silently by their side, dignified despite his age, while Joey lay snug in a small scarf inside the backpack on Milka's chest, eyes wide with curiosity. When they turned past a dense row of trees, Daniel signaled for Milka to stop. Ahead of them stood an abandoned camp surrounded by rusted fences and patched corrugated sheets glinting in the moonlight. But what made them both catch their breath was the sound coming from inside, hoarse barks, whimpers, desperate cries stifled by chains. Milka hugged the backpack tightly, feeling Joey shiver. She swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the dim scene before them. "Daniel, is this really the place Raymond mentioned?" Daniel nodded, his gaze sharp. He signaled for Milka to crouch low, and together they crept along the fence looking for cover. Ranger stayed close, tense ears pricked to listen. Through a gap between two planks, Milka shuddered at the sight within. Makeshift pens made of rusted metal housed dozens of dogs, mostly shepherds, their coats matted chains cutting red into their necks. Some were nothing but skin and bones, their eyes hollow. A few shivered, huddling in corners for warmth from each other. Milka bit her lip, tears brimming. Her hand trembled as she reached out, as if to touch the trapped souls through the fence. Joey let out a small squeak inside the backpack, as if sensing the pain of his fellow dogs on the other side. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady. "We'll save them. But we need clear evidence, or no one will believe us." He pulled out a small camera with an infrared lens, carefully photographing every frame, the dilapidated pens, the exhausted dogs, even the open wounds on their bodies. Summoning all her courage, Milka used her phone to record the pitiful barks, creating undeniable living proof. As they watched, two figures emerged from a small wooden house. At the center of the camp, a burly man with a dragon tattoo on his shoulder, and a shorter man with greasy hair holding a stick. They walked along the pens, dumping scraps of rotten food into the troughs. The dogs surged forward, hungry and thirsty, jostling desperately for any morsel. Milka turned her face away, eyes red. Daniel gripped the camera tightly, breathing fast. He whispered, "Enough. We have the evidence." They backed away, moving along the old trail to leave the camp. But near the forest's edge, Ranger suddenly froze, growling softly. A flashlight beam swept over them, and a voice shouted, "Who's there?" Milka's heart thumped. Daniel quickly pressed her into a tree. Ranger, standing firm in front, Joey curled up in the backpack. One of the guards approached, flashlight shining directly on the spot they were hiding. Daniel whispered, "Wait until his back is turned, then we move fast." The footsteps drew closer, the light scanning Milka's face. In that heart-stopping moment, Joey let out a tiny squeak. Milka hugged him tight, heart in her throat. But strangely, a distant rustle from the forest masked the sound, keeping the guard unaware. He cursed, swung the light one last time, and left. Once the figure disappeared, Daniel helped Milka up. They hurried through the dark forest trail, only breathing easy, when the faint streetlights of town came into view. Milka's legs still shook. "We saw it with our own eyes," she whispered, voice choked with emotion. "We have to get those dogs out." Daniel nodded, eyes shining with resolve. "And we will, Milka. But we need to plan carefully." She hugged Joey close, feeling his tiny heart racing. The puppy's clear gaze reminded her that they couldn't afford to turn back. The next morning, the pale winter sunlight spilled through the clinic windows, falling across the wooden table where Milka carefully arranged the intake records for the new litter of puppies from Raymond Cole. Each page, aged and yellowed by time, carried meticulous details. Dates of birth, bloodlines, vaccination records. But Milka knew that buried within these details could be critical clues. Joey slept soundly in his warm little nest, his tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Yet every so often, his small eyes fluttered open, as if reminding her that time would not wait. Milka sat down, gently flipping through the pages. Most information seemed standard, but a few entries caught her eye. Several certificates bore blurred stamps, unfamiliar signatures, and vaccination dates that didn't match up. Her brow furrowed as she examined the numbers, a sudden thought forming. "This isn't accidental," she murmured. She put on her glasses and scrutinized the stamps more closely. Some stamps were identical, yet applied to multiple puppies, causing dates of birth and owner information to overlap in odd ways. Milka bit her lip, sensing that she had just brushed against a carefully hidden secret. At that moment, Daniel appeared at the clinic door. He stood quietly, eyes scanning the room, Ranger following behind, ears perked in alert. "Anything new?" he asked, his deep voice tinged with concern. Milka gestured him over, lowering her voice. "Look at this. These certificates," she said, handing him the first page. "Some vaccination dates don't match, stamps are duplicated. I think there's serious wrongdoing here." Daniel studied the papers, his expression darkening. Ranger sat attentively at his feet, eyes fixed on every page. "This certificate," he murmured. "It matches a litter from another facility several states over. Raymond hasn't just been selling puppies locally. He's running interstate operations, and these falsified documents are probably to legitimize his deals." Milka exhaled, feeling the weight of the revelation. She sank back into her chair, pressing a hand to her forehead. Everything was lining up: the scent of medication on Joey, faint scratches in the night, the echoes of barking from the warehouse, all pointing to a sophisticated network she had never imagined touching. "Daniel, if what you're saying is true..." Milka's voice trembled. "Joey isn't just a stray. He's the first link helping us uncover this entire operation." Daniel nodded, pulling out a laptop and opening a map of the local area. Points marking puppies supplied by Raymond lit up, forming a network of routes crisscrossing multiple states. Ranger pressed his nose to Daniel's leg, as if emphasizing the gravity of the situation. "He's meticulous," Daniel said, in a low, serious tone. "These transactions aren't simple puppy sales. They involve high-paying clients, and Joey is our first piece of evidence." Milka gently cradled Joey to her chest. The tiny puppy turned his head, eyes following her every move, ears twitching. In that moment, she realized Joey had become more than a fragile life in need of rescue. He was a guiding light at the center of a dangerous, larger plan. While reviewing more files, Milka discovered a sheet listing delivery addresses in multiple states with fake recipient names. She drew in a sharp breath, heart racing. Each number, each address was living proof of the deceit and intricacy of Raymond's network. "We have to be careful," Daniel said, voice grave. "If Raymond finds out we have this evidence, who knows what he'll do?" Milka looked down at Joey, eyes wide with trust. She stroked his tiny head. "You don't know it, but you're helping us. You're a living clue." As evening fell, they drafted a preliminary plan document, photographs, record, barking, and behavior, back up all physical files, and prepare to approach the warehouse directly. Ranger stayed close, his experienced eyes scanning the surroundings, a reminder of the danger ahead. Joey, small as he was, remained curious. He nudged into Milka's lap, tiny legs curled, eyes bright with courage. Milka smiled, feeling that the little pup was a reminder every step matters, and fragile lives could hold the most important evidence. When night fully blanketed the town, Milka and Daniel returned to the clinic. Joey slept snugly in his warm blanket, though his little eyes still peeked open following Milka's movements. Her promise to protect him felt stronger than ever, even as her curiosity and suspicion about Raymond's criminal network deepened. Milka recorded everything: paper files, maps of delivery points, the sounds of barking, the scent of medications. She knew these were their first concrete clues, but also that real danger was beginning to seep into their lives. The fading afternoon light shone through the window, illuminating the cluttered desk covered with files, neatly folded papers, and small health monitoring devices for Joey. Milka hunched over her chair, hand caressing the tiny pup whose breathing was weak but steady. The little dog had become a source of spiritual strength, motivating her to take the dangerous steps ahead. The clinic door opened, and Daniel entered Ranger at his side, eyes sweeping every detail of the room. He placed a case on the table and looked up at Milka, voice steady and serious. "I think I need to tell you something before we go further." Milka lifted her head, fatigue in her eyes, but curiosity burning. Joey lifted his tiny head, ears perked, sensing the weight of Daniel's words. Daniel sat gently stroking Ranger. "I investigated Raymond Cole back when I was with the Special Police Unit. There's a case I never finished. The disappearance of Apollo." Milka drew in a sharp breath, the name echoing as an unresolved mystery in her mind. "Apollo," she whispered, voice trembling. "The K9. Daniel nodded, eyes shadowed. "Yes. Apollo was a specially trained police dog, part of many operations. One day it vanished. No trace. No one believed Raymond was involved, but my research traced the last lead back to his facility." Milka shivered, pressing her hand to Joey's chest. The tiny puppy in her arms suddenly felt unbearably heavy, carrying the weight of a massive secret. Daniel continued. "The files, the delivery addresses, the fake certificates, all point to the fact that Raymond isn't just a normal breeder. He has underground connections, runs interstate puppy operations, and may have exploited Apollo to produce so-called high-quality dogs that are actually stolen canines." Milka froze, her mind spinning. Every sign from Joey, from the files, from the echoing barks in the night, began to connect into a horrifying picture. We're looking at an entire dark network. Milka exhaled, her voice trembling. An illegal dog trade, kidnappings, and abuse. Daniel nodded. Ranger sat silently, his eyes sweeping the room, ears perked. Every sense of his reminded them that they were stepping into dangerous territory. Joey, meanwhile, had dozed off for a while, then lifted his head to watch Milka. Every tiny movement of the puppy made her feel a companion was at her side, reminding her that, even with danger so close, they were not alone. Milka smiled faintly, stroking Joey's head. "Thank you, Joey. This little one is keeping me calm more than I expected." Daniel stood and moved to the window, looking out at the clinic's front yard. He furrowed his brow, his voice low. "We need clear evidence. Files, photos, recordings. Everything must be collected carefully. Raymond won't let anyone enter the compound easily." Milka took a deep breath, glancing at Joey curled up in his warm bed. She felt the tiny beat of his heart, reminding her that every precaution was necessary to protect this fragile life. "So what's our next step?" Milka asked, determination in her voice. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, serious but reassuring. "We'll approach the compound covertly. No attention. Ranger will help guard and alert us to any danger. Joey." He glanced at the small puppy. "You'll be important, but we must keep you completely safe." Milka nodded. She knew that Joey, though tiny, had become a symbol of courage, the reason she had to stay strong. Not just a fragile life, he was a bridge between her and Daniel, between the truth and what had been hidden. They began to map out a plan. Milka took careful notes, points visible from a distance. Distances between each kennel where the dogs were held. Times they could approach without being detected. Daniel checked Ranger, retraining some basic commands to ensure any threat would be signaled. Joey lay snug in Milka's backpack, eyes following every gesture as if sensing the importance of the mission. Evening fell, the soft yellow lights casting a warm yet mysterious glow over the clinic. Milka held Joey close, whispering, "We'll do this, Joey. You fought to live now. You'll help us uncover the truth." Daniel stood by the window, eyes scanning the night sky. "This network isn't simple. But with Joey by our side, we have a chance to expose it all. Ranger sat at Daniel's feet, his aged eyes glinting with alertness. Joey nestled closer to Milka, his clear, determined eyes seeming to understand that what lay ahead would be dangerous and challenging. Outside, the wind whistled through the bare trees, a reminder that darkness still lurked. But inside the small clinic, 4 eyes, Milka's, Joey's, Daniel's, and Ranger's, were focused on one goal: uncover the truth and protect the lives at risk. Night draped over the small town, a thin mist coating the streets. Silver moonlight piercing through the leafless trees, casting dappled shadows along the road back to the clinic. Milka drove home after a long veterinary shift, Joey snug in his basket, his tiny body trembling with the motion of the car. She felt his faint warmth and reminded herself to stay calm, though her mind was taut as a bowstring. From the corner of her eye, she noticed flickering headlights behind her. At first, she thought it was just a passing car, but after several turns, the light remained close. Her heart raced, arms tightening on the wheel. Ranger sat alert in the car, ears perked, sensing something off. She tried to speed up, weaving through empty streets, but the light kept following. A chill ran through her, crawling into her fingers. Milka glanced at Joey, his round eyes wide, trembling slightly, sensing danger she hadn't yet defined. A strange sound echoed from behind as she stopped at a dark 3-way intersection. Ranger stirred, bristling, emitting a low growl. Milka realized clearly someone was approaching. She gasped, pressing lightly on the accelerator, the headlights sweeping along the forest path by the roadside. "Stay calm, Joey," she whispered, holding him close. "Ranger, you've got this." Ranger dashed to the rear door, vigilant. The older K9, trained for years, remained swift and sharp despite his age. A figure flitted near the trees. Ranger barked loudly, leaping to block the path, muscles taut. The follower stumbled back, then disappeared into the darkness. Milka swallowed hard, exhaling with relief, yet her hands remained clenched on the wheel. Ranger returned to his spot, bending near Joey, panting, but eyes still scanning. The little puppy nestled in Milka's arms, eyes shining with courage, seeming to understand he was protected. Arriving at the clinic, Milka locked the car and stepped out. The cold night air, gentle gusts brushing past, made her shiver. She hurried inside, Ranger running ahead to check the surroundings, Joey snug in her backpack, stirring slightly. Inside the clinic was quiet, only the crackling of the heater filling the room. Milka set Joey on the exam table, eyes tracking each breath. Exhaustion and tension rose within her. She knew the darkness outside still lurked, those wanting to obstruct their investigation and could return at any moment. She stepped into the office, reviewing the files for any irregularities. Ranger stood guard by the door, eyes sharp, body ready. Milka stroked Joey's tiny, soft fur. "You fought so bravely, Joey. We'll keep going." Clues about Raymond's warehouse, forged documents, and suspicious transactions filled her mind. Joey, though small, had become the focus, not just a fragile life to protect, but the motivation driving Milka to face danger. Late into the night, as Milka wrote in her journal, Ranger lay nearby, his aged eyes still scanning the window. Every sound from the forest outside made all 3, Milka, Joey, and Ranger, alert, ready to react. Joey shifted slightly in his nest, pressing his head into Milka's lap, tiny but resolute, reminding her that no matter what, they could not back down. Milka recorded every detail: the strange car lights, the shadows, unusual signs at the compound, tiny scratches on Joey's body. She knew that with more evidence, they would be even closer to exposing the truth behind Raymond. Outside, the wind rustled through bare branches, a reminder that darkness had never left. But inside, the fire blazed. Joey rested in Milka's lap. Ranger stood guard, and Milka felt strength from these lives. The tension remained, but she had found companionship and resolve. Milka let out a soft sigh, watching Joey sleep peacefully. We've survived a dangerous night, but there will be many more challenges ahead. I promise you, I won't let anyone hurt you or your friends. Joey curled up, pressing against her chest, and though his eyes were closed, they still shone with trust and quiet resilience. Ranger glanced back, his gaze seasoned, yet reassured, as if confirming that Milka and Joey were safe, at least until the next morning. Outside the clinic window, the sky was painted in pale golden hues, reflecting off the old glass and the wooden table piled with records. Milka went over each certificate, comparing vaccination dates, checking every small detail. Joey lay snug in his small bed, ears, perked eyes following her every move. Ranger stood near the door, his experienced eyes sweeping the room, sensing that something was about to happen. The clatter of a vehicle echoed from the gate. Milka frowned slightly, an uneasy premonition stirring. When she opened the door, a familiar figure appeared, Raymond Cole, carrying a cage with several new German shepherds, calm but radiating a cold, sharp aura. "Good afternoon, Milka," Raymond said, his voice deep, yet polite, eyes flicking toward Joey. "It's delivery day again. I hope you'll welcome them warmly." Milka straightened her gaze, firm, unshaken by his icy demeanor. "Hello, Raymond. I'll check the dogs immediately." Raymond stepped inside, placing his hand lightly on the cage as though asserting ownership. His low voice carried an implicit threat. "You should focus on your job, Milka. Caring for the dogs is your top priority, and the rest, it's better if you stay out of it." Milka felt the pressure behind his words, but remained composed, her eyes never leaving Joey, who trembled slightly in her backpack. "I just want to make sure every dog is healthy and properly cared for," she said. Raymond's lips curled in a forced smile, still cold beneath the surface. "Yes, care. But don't get too curious. A veterinarian should know their place." Milka stepped toward the first cage, checking each dog's health, feeling their heartbeat and breath. Joey shivered in the backpack as she bent down, his small eyes following every movement. Seeing the trust in his gaze, Milka knew she could not back down. Raymond walked along the cages, each movement radiating control and dominance. One young dog lay still, eyes flaring with fear at his presence. Milka noted every detail, markings on the fur, each dog's energy level, and small, unusual scratches. "These dogs look exhausted and stressed, Raymond," Milka said evenly. "I need to know about their diet and recent vaccinations." Raymond paused, a flash of irritation in his eyes. "You should trust me. They've been properly cared for. But if you want, I can quickly run you through the records." Milka shook her head sharply. "I need to check everything. Every dog matters, especially Joey and the younger ones." Raymond inhaled, a light smile crossing his face, yet it carried a warning. "You're asking too many questions, Milka. Focus on caring for the dogs and leave the rest alone." "I will care for them," Milka said firmly, "but I will also make sure they are safe." Tension filled the room. Ranger blocked the doorway, fur bristled, breathing steady but powerful, silently warning Milka to stay vigilant. Joey burrowed into her chest, eyes shining with total trust. Raymond approached, leaning down to look at Joey. "This little one, very cute. But be careful. Too much attention can sometimes bring trouble." Milka met his gaze without flinching. "Joey deserves protection, and I will provide it." Raymond smiled and stepped out quietly, but his final look lingered on Milka, a silent reminder that he was still watching, still controlling. Once the door closed, Milka exhaled, pressing Joey to her chest. She realized the tension was far from over. Darkness still loomed. Yet in that moment, she had affirmed her stance, protecting Joey, and the puppies was her top priority. Ranger lowered his head, whined softly, then lay down by Milka's feet, eyes still fixed on the door. Joey shivered, eyes wide, as if reminding her that the days of trial were far from over. Milka smiled faintly, stroking him. "We'll get through this, Joey. Everything will become clear." Outside, the sunset, faded shadows spilling over the dog compound where Raymond still maneuvered and monitored. Milka knew this confrontation was just the beginning. Strange signs, hidden clues, and Joey's unwavering gaze would be her guiding light through the darkness ahead. Night fell over the abandoned compound, only a pale moonlight spilling through the rusted fence, casting long, distorted shadows on the ground. Milka held her breath, pressing close to the fence, moving carefully through low bushes. Joey curled up in her backpack against her chest, his small round eyes reflecting the faint glimmers of light in the darkness. Ranger led the way, his steps deliberate, alert to every strange sound. A hoarse bark mingled with weak whines. The sound was unlike ordinary barking. It was steady, tense, and pained. Milka furrowed her brow, heart racing. She realized it was Apollo, the missing police dog, now trapped in the shadows. "We have to be careful," Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible in the night. "Every move could give us away." Milka nodded, eyes following Ranger, then toward the warehouse entrance. The old wooden door, rusted metal frame was ajar, letting out the moans of dozens of dogs, mingling with the damp, musty smell and the stench of dog waste. Joey shivered in the backpack, pressing closer to her chest, sensing the horror within. Milka inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. She bent down, placing a hand on the backpack, whispering, "Stay calm, Joey. We're going to help them. All of them." Slipping through the crack, they faced a scene that froze Milka in place. Dozens of German shepherds were crammed into tight metal cages, their bones visible under scraggly fur. Many lay still, eyes wide yet vacant, pleading silently for rescue. Others squirmed, pushing to find space, barking and whining, their cries shattering the night's silence. Milka felt her chest tighten. She pressed Joey against her hands, trembling, yet her eyes burned with determination. Ranger stood guard at the entrance, fur bristled, breathing steady but body taut, ready to respond. "Apollo," Daniel whispered, his voice shaking. "He's at the far end of the row of cages." Milka crept along the dim light, each step cautious ears attuned to every sound. From afar, Apollo's eyes gleamed a mix of vigilance and despair. Milka noticed that the police dog still carried the commanding presence of a canine, his intelligent gaze tracking every movement. A cold wind swept through, carrying the damp, chemical-laced scent of old food. Joey let out a quiet whimper. Milka looked down. The little dog's wide eyes seemed to lend her strength. She crouched gently, patting him. "Stay calm, Joey. We're almost there." Step by step, they approached the last cage. The imprisoned dogs were near exhaustion, their bodies trembling with each shallow breath. Milka could feel every heartbeat, smell the fear and despair. In a few minutes, they would confirm Apollo's presence and the other dogs. But any mistake could be dangerous. Daniel signaled her to stop. He crouched, placing his hand on Ranger. "Stay silent. We need to observe, gather evidence before we act." Milka nodded. She pulled out a small camera, photographing each cage, every dog, each sign of injury, bones protruding through matted fur. Every click was living proof. Joey shivered in the backpack but kept a steady gaze, as if understanding that her documentation was giving these dogs a chance at freedom. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from afar. Footsteps on gravel. Ranger immediately growled, eyes alert, body tense. Milka pressed a hand over Joey's head. The little dog crouched, but stayed silent, eyes scanning the room. Daniel whispered, "Prepare." He could come back at any moment. All three held their breath, listening to the smallest sounds. Rustling wind, whimpers, metal clanging against cages, all merged into a tense symphony. Milka knew that every passing second was a chance to save these fragile lives. At the end of the row, they saw Apollo. The police dog retained his canine poise but clearly showed signs of prolonged confinement. Matted fur, weary eyes, exhausted body. Milka exhaled softly, a mix of relief and heaviness. Joey let out a quiet whine as if recognizing a kindred spirit before him. "We found them?" Milka whispered, pressing Joey to her chest. "Now it's time to plan their rescue." Outside, the night wind whistled through the trees, moonlight slicing through leaves, creating shifting patches of light on the ground. Darkness still thickened around the camp, but inside the warehouse, Milka, Joey, Daniel, and Ranger's hearts burned bright. The bond between human and dog courage and determination had never been stronger. Night deepened over the abandoned camp, casting dense shadows between the steel cages. Milka held her breath, watching Joey's steady breathing in the backpack. She and Daniel had observed the camp for hours, documenting every detail, from injuries to the hoarse barks echoing through the warehouse. Ranger stood guard, fur-bristled, body-taut eyes scanning every corner. A shiver ran through her. They were no longer in control. Strange footsteps echoed from the trail behind the camp. A flashlight flickered through the leaves. Milka immediately recognized it. Raymond had discovered their surveillance. "Get ready," Daniel whispered, eyes sharp. "He has lookouts." Milka inhaled deeply, gripping the backpack. Joey curled into her chest, ears up. She patted him gently. "Stay calm, Joey. I'm here with you." From behind the fence, two figures dashed forward, flashlight beams piercing the darkness. Their faces were hidden under hoods, hands gripping clubs and chains. Milka stepped back, heart racing, breath quickening. "Daniel," she whispered. Daniel reacted instantly, drawing a small stun gun signaling Ranger. The old dog lunged, snarling, body tense like a living barricade. One ambusher froze, stepping back, eyes wide, as Ranger barreled forward. In the chaos, a piece of broken roof tile fell, striking Milka's arm. She winced, collapsing slightly, but held Joey tight. Blood trickled from the scratch, yet fear gave way to determination. Joey, for the first time, did not tremble or hide. Tiny but fearless, he leapt from the backpack, barking sharply, a voice cutting through the night's silence. The ambushers froze, startled, their steps faltering. That small, resolute bark made Milka shiver, realizing Joey had become her strongest emotional shield. Daniel quickly pulled Milka to safety while commanding Ranger to pursue the assailants. With the speed and experience of a former K9 Ranger, blocked the path, knocking one to the ground, sending the other fleeing into the darkness. Milka panted, pressing Joey to her chest, feeling the little heartbeat steady. "Good job, Joey. You were incredibly brave." The blood on her hand dried slowly, but the wound did not weaken her. Her eyes turned to the camp, where dozens of dogs remained caged, dim light reflecting off the steel bars. Every detail needed documenting, every move deliberate, as Raymond and his remaining men still lurked. "We can't stop now," Daniel said, voice low but firm. "Joey just gave us a chance, but many more dogs need saving." Milka nodded, stroking Joey gently. "I know, and I won't let anyone harm them." They moved quietly toward the fence, Ranger guarding behind, eyes scanning the area. Joey looked up at Milka, conveying pure courage. The bond between human and tiny dog had never been stronger. A bark echoed from afar, bouncing off the rotting wooden walls. Milka recognized it as a sign from Apollo, the confined K9. Her heart swelled with both fear and determination. "We have to keep going, Joey," she whispered, hands caressing him. "You're the light guiding me." The wind hissed through the corrugated gaps, mingling with barking and whimpers from the other dogs. The scene was chilling, yet fueled Milka's resolve. She knew each step had to be precise. One mistake could doom the entire rescue. Ranger stood guard, Joey nestled in her chest, small eyes unwavering and Daniel monitoring each cage. 3 lives, human puppy and old dog, were united in a single purpose to save the remaining dogs from Raymond's grasp. Milka inhaled deeply, closing her eyes for a moment to steady herself. Each step on the gravel reminded her of the lurking darkness. Yet Joey had become a beacon. His fragile yet resilient life had ignited the belief that they would not give up. A cold afternoon settled in the last sunlight, filtering through the bare trees, casting feeble streaks of gold onto the road, leading to the clinic. Milka stood by the window, her eyes following Joey curled up in his warm little bed, breathing evenly, his tiny ears twitching to the sounds of wind outside the porch. A restless feeling stirred within her. After all the days of observing and gathering clues, it was finally time to act. Yet danger lurked nearby, and no one could be certain everything would go smoothly. The phone on the table buzzed Daniel's voice coming through Milka. "I've contacted the local police and a special task force. They're ready to assist, but we need to be thoroughly prepared." Milka gripped the phone tightly, her eyes shining with determination. "I'll come along, Daniel. Joey and the other dogs need me. I can't stand aside." Daniel was silent for a moment, then sighed, "I know. But we have to be extremely careful. Raymond isn't easy to deal with. He'll do anything to protect his property." Milka looked at Joey, her eyes reflecting the firelight. The little pup had endured so much danger, yet remained resilient, reminding her that they couldn't give up. "I know. We'll plan every step meticulously. Every move must be precise." Daniel lifted a map from the table and spread it across the floor. The paths, storage areas, and dog pens were all carefully marked. "This is the layout of the compound. These paths are points we can approach without being detected. The last door leads directly to the underground room, where Apollo and many other dogs are held." Milka leaned in, her gaze sharp. She noted every detail: the distance from the fences, the locations of patrolling shadows, the positions of lampposts and obstacles on the ground. Joey lifted his head as if reading the lines on the map. "We'll need support equipment, infrared flashlights, sensor-mounted cameras, and some light protective gear." Daniel continued, his voice serious. "Ranger will guide us and alert us if any danger arises." Milka nodded softly, stroking Joey. "You'll stay with me. You're our guiding light, Joey." She began checking the necessary supplies: a backpack for Joey, a small water bottle, spare leash, antiseptics, and first aid items. Ranger stood nearby, scanning the room, a silent reminder that everything had to be perfect before they moved. "We'll divide the tasks," Daniel continued. "The police will secure the perimeter while we approach from the north via the trail I scouted. Ranger will stay ahead to protect and warn us, and Joey." He looked at Milka, his voice softening. "We'll be in your arms." Milka took a deep breath, feeling Joey's tiny heartbeat against her chest. She knew any mistake could cost them everything, but she also understood this was their only chance to save the dogs. "I'm ready," she said firmly. As dusk fell, Milka and Daniel met the police at a secret location. Ranger moved ahead cautiously, occasionally letting out a low hiss to signal all was clear. Milka held Joey, staring at the flashing police lights, a surge of anticipation mingling with determination. "We'll proceed carefully," Daniel emphasized. "No dog must be harmed." Milka nodded, clutching Joey to her chest, her eyes fixed on the entrance to the compound. The tiny pup, fragile yet courageous, had become a symbol of resilience, reminding her they had to be strong for the life of every creature here. Ranger growled softly, lowering his head to Milka as if offering support and protection. Joey snuggled close, eyes sparkling with trust and courage. Milka knew that in the coming hours, the three of them, human, seasoned dog, and little pup, would have to move in perfect harmony to navigate the darkness. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the field, Milka stepped onto the trail leading to the compound. Joey curled inside the backpack, ears flicking to the rhythm of her heartbeat. Ranger led the way, checking every step. Daniel walked beside her, scanning the night sky and the surrounding paths. "Ready," Daniel whispered. "Always," Milka replied, her voice resolute. The moon's faint glow illuminated the trail, revealing 3 figures and 2 dogs, drawing closer to where dozens of dogs were imprisoned, where Apollo and Joey were about to become the center of a fight for survival. Silence was so complete that every heartbeat seemed to echo across the field, signaling that the rescue mission was about to begin. Night enveloped the abandoned compound like a black velvet blanket, dotted with a few twinkling stars. Milka crouched behind a bush, Joey huddled in the backpack. Ears pricked, small eyes gleaming with determination. Ranger stood before them, his muscular frame, taut eyes scanning the area, ready to react to any threat. Daniel stood nearby, gripping his stun gun and flashlight, eyes fixed on the old warehouse ahead. Step by step, they advanced according to plan. Daniel leading Ranger, observing ahead, Milka holding Joey close. The tension was palpable, silence so deep they could hear the dry leaves rustle underfoot. As they neared the fence, Daniel signaled to stop. Through the gaps in rusted sheets, flickering light from inside reflected distorted shadows. Hoarse barking mingled with whining echoed, making Milka shiver. Joey trembled slightly in the backpack, yet his eyes shone, reminding her to be brave. "Let's go in," Daniel whispered. "Ranger, lead and alert us." Ranger dashed toward the entrance steps, firm yet careful. Milka followed Joey, pressed against her chest. Only a few meters more, and they could see Apollo and the caged dogs. Suddenly a fire flared. Milka flinched, drawing a deep breath. Red light spilled over the metal cages, reflecting off rust and glittering, trembling patches. Thick black smoke poured out, obscuring the moon and forcing her to cover her mouth. "Raymond," Daniel whispered, voice trembling. "He's trying to destroy everything." The dog's cries rose in chaos, from whimpers to desperate barking. Milka felt Joey's tiny heartbeat, his ears twitching to every horrific sound. But his gaze remained bright and steady, giving her strength. She bent down, whispering into Joey's ear, "Stay calm, little one. We'll save them all." Daniel signaled the police to advance from the north. Rangers stood behind, growling softly to warn off intruders. Milka gripped Joey tightly, placing each step carefully on the gravel-strewn ground. The smoke reduced visibility, but the sound of the trapped dogs mixed with the whistling wind made her heart pound even faster. "Careful," Daniel whispered. "They won't let us in easily." A figure lunged out from the old window. Rangers surged forward, barking furiously, blocking the intruder and startling him into stepping back. Joey leapt from the backpack, letting out a small but piercing yelp that echoed through the smoke and flames, making the others hesitate. Milka let out a soft shout, both to encourage Joey and to steady herself. The flames roared higher, the smoke thick and choking. Milka inhaled, tasting the acrid, scorching scent that filled the air. She pressed Joey to her chest, reaching out to steady Daniel as he stepped over a pile of crumbling bricks. Ranger moved ahead, checking each cage, alert to every motion. They spotted Apollo, the aging canine, at the far end of the cages. His eyes glimmered sharply, though his body was weary. Daniel raised a hand in signal. Milka nodded and stepped toward him. Joey whimpered softly, but it seemed the little pup was guiding Milka along a safe path. "We need to move." "Fast," Daniel whispered. "The more smoke, the harder it is to see." Milka inhaled deeply, setting Joey down for a moment so he could walk close by her side. He trembled, but followed, eyes bright and determined, as if reminding her that every life was worth saving. The cages were packed tightly. Many dogs huddled and whimpering, searching for space. Milka shone her flashlight through the gaps, documenting everything. The smoke, dense and acrid with the smell of scorched wood and dog waste, made every breath feel stifled. A scream rose from behind, but Ranger leapt forward, growling sharply to block the threat. Joey, tiny but fearless, yipped again, causing the intruder to falter. Milka pressed him to her chest, whispering, "Good job, Joey. You're so brave." The team pressed further into the compound, hearts pounding. Red flames danced across the ground, the dogs' cries echoed all around, and the smoke drifted into every corner. Milka knew this was only the beginning, but with Joey, Ranger, and Daniel, they had the strength to continue. They reached the last row of cages where Apollo and numerous puppies were trapped. Milka knelt, placing her hand on the iron bars, gazing into the desperate eyes of each dog. Joey stood by her side, ears perked, letting out a soft, encouraging bark, urging her to be courageous. Daniel signaled, eyes sharp, scanning for any danger. Ranger stood firm, body tense. Milka hugged Joey close, whispering, "We'll get you all out, little one. You've been so brave already." Outside, thick smoke and blazing flames reflected crimson light on the rusty metal doors. Every bark, every small breath from Joey, every low growl from Ranger created a chaotic yet vivid symphony, a reminder that this was a battle for survival, where every life mattered. The smoke filled the abandoned camp, thick and scorching, narrowing Milka's vision. Whimpering dogs mingled with the howl of the wind, creating a space both chaotic and heartbreaking. She pressed Joey to her chest, feeling the tiny but strong heartbeat beneath her hand. Ranger stood as a living barrier, fur-bristled eyes sweeping the path like a vigilant wall. Milka spotted a small gap at the end of the cages, just wide enough for Joey to slip through. The little pup trembled, yet his eyes shone with understanding. Milka crouched, whispering, "Joey, you can do it. Lead the way." Joey leapt forward, glanced back at her, then stepped carefully through the gap. His small body moved with agility, ignoring the smoke and heat from the flames behind. Each step was light but decisive. His soft barks served as a guiding signal for Milka and Daniel. "Look, Joey's showing the way," Milka whispered, holding him close, hands ready to catch him if needed. Daniel followed, eyes sharp, scanning their surroundings. Ranger moved ahead, ears pricked alert to a guard lurking in the shadows. Joey stopped before a rotting wooden door leading to the basement, yipping softly but urgently. Milka leaned in, listening carefully to the chaotic sounds below, whimpers of confined dogs, deep barks, movements suggesting Apollo's presence. "We're close," Daniel whispered, emphasizing each careful step. "Be ready." Milka summoned her courage, set Joey down, and slowly twisted the ancient door. It creaked, the rusty metal groaning, but Joey stood firm, eyes bright, radiating courage. Ranger stepped back, poised to react. The door opened to a dark basement. Inside, dozens of dogs were trapped in tight cages, their fur-matted eyes hollow. Some shivered, huddled in corners, desperation clear in their gaze. At the far end, Apollo, the legendary K9, stood watchful, body weary, fur, filthy hope flickering in his eyes as he saw them. Joey dashed forward, letting out a small, sharp yip that echoed through the basement. The other dogs turned toward him, recognizing the arrival of a new companion. Milka inhaled, feeling a surge of courage from the tiny pup. "Good job, Joey. You're leading the way." She and Daniel stepped in, careful and silent, to avoid startling the caged dogs. Ranger went ahead, ears erect, spotting a guard lurking in the darkness. Daniel signaled, and the old K9 lunged, growling, forcing the intruder to retreat a step. Milka hurried to Apollo, gently opening the cage. The K9 stirred, eyes still cautious, but relaxed slightly upon seeing her. Joey jumped near Apollo softly, yipping, guiding and comforting the remaining dogs. Milka stroked the little pup, eyes misting with emotion. "We have to save them all," she whispered. "Every single one deserves life." Together they unlocked each cage, lifting the dogs from darkness into the light. The smell of mold and spoiled food lingered, But the flashlight beams and Joey's brave spirit lit up the room. Some dogs shivered as they felt human warmth for the first time. Joey leapt near Milka, quiet yips, guiding them to the last cages. The tiny pup, once fragile, had become a silent hero, leading Milka and Daniel through danger to rescue Apollo and the entire litter. When all the dogs were out of the basement, Milka hugged Joey tightly. He trembled but stared with resolute eyes as if saying, "We did it. But there's more to come." Rangers stood guard scanning the area, confirming the room was temporarily safe. Milka sighed, gazing over the entire group of recently rescued dogs. Each one was exhausted, their eyes carrying newfound trust and hope. Joey, though tiny, stood at her side, ears perked and eyes shining brightly. Milka could feel the strength and determination radiating from this little pup, realizing that it was thanks to Joey that everything had been possible. "We've made it through the first step, Joey," she whispered, hugging the little one close to her chest. "But the mission isn't over yet." The light from the fire in the rescue vehicle outside cast a warm glow across her face, reflecting in the bright eyes of Joey and Apollo. The scene etched itself into Milka's mind, reinforcing the belief that no matter how small or fragile, courage and determination could change the world. The smoke from the flames had calmed, and the red glow now cast only faint shadows across the ground and the empty cages. Milka, Daniel, and Ranger stood at the forefront behind them, the rescued dogs shivering but safe. Joey stood beside Milka, ears upright, small yet resolute eyes, like a tiny warrior standing amidst chaos. Outside, the wail of police sirens pierced the camp, mingling with the roar of emergency engines and pounding footsteps. A figure loomed, blocking the remaining red glow from the fire. Raymond Cole and his younger brother. Surrounded, they did not flinch. Raymond's gaze was cold, sharp, filled with pride and defiance. "This is your last chance," Daniel said, his voice firm and steady. "Surrender." Raymond yanked the dog cage violently, growling. "I've done nothing wrong. These are my property. Your property. These lives are not objects," Milka retorted sharply, her gaze sweeping over Joey and the other dogs. Joey let out a low growl, small but potent. Milka pressed her hand to his head, letting him feel her steadiness, while still allowing him to show that his resolve was not small. That faint growl echoed through the red glow and smoke, a warning that those standing before them would not escape easily. Raymond's younger brother, tall and muscular, stepped forward, voice harsh. "This is your outrage. These dogs belong to us, and you have no right to interfere." Milka frowned, her tone deep and unwavering. "These dogs deserve to live, and we will prove it." Daniel activated a recorder camera, rolling while police closed in, weapons at the ready. The tension was taut as a string, every movement scrutinized. You'll regret this," Raymond shouted, his voice echoing across the camp. But Joey's determined bark, small yet piercing through the smoke, gradually drowned out Raymond's roar. The other rescued dogs growled in unison, signaling that justice was near. Milka stood tall, holding Joey close to her chest, feeling his tiny but strong heartbeat as if he were lending her strength. In the blink of an eye, the police advanced, tightening the perimeter. Ranger leapt forward, standing guard, growling to warn Raymond and his brother. There was no way out. Raymond's eyes flashed with anger and helplessness, while his brother shouted, struggling, but the officers quickly restrained them, handcuffing and leading them away from the camp. "We won't let these people harm any more lives," Daniel said to Milka, resolute. Milka took a deep breath, watching Joey stand before the line of pups, eyes tracking every step of Raymond and his brother. The little pup, though tiny, growled steadfastly, and everyone nearby could feel the power of determination emanating from this small yet courageous soul. The tense scene lasted only minutes, but to Milka, each second felt like 1,000 years. Joey stood in the center, ears, raised eyes bright, a reminder that they had faced the greatest challenge, confronting the perpetrator and protecting the dogs from cruel hands. As Raymond and his brother were led away, Milka exhaled, hugging Joey and gently patting him. "Well done, Joey. You were so brave." Joey nuzzled into her chest, eyes wide, clear, and unwavering. Milka felt his heartbeat steady and strong, carrying the belief that justice had been served, at least in part. Ranger stood nearby, fur-bristled body tense, yet eyes calm. Milka looked back at the remaining dogs in the camp, exhausted but hopeful. Each was spent, yet now free, stepping into the light after long days of confinement and abandonment. Joey, small but fearless, embodied the living symbol of this victory. She stroked Joey, whispering, "We did it, Joey. We saved them. But there's still more work to do." Outside the camp, smoke lingered, headlights and police beams illuminating the remaining darkness. Milka realized that the final confrontation had only reached its first stage. But thanks to Joey, Daniel, and Ranger, they had achieved a crucial turning point, opening hope for all the abandoned lives. The courtroom was bathed in cold light, the stone walls reflecting the tense gazes of all present. Milka sat upright, hands gripping the carefully prepared documents, records, photos, and recordings from the dog camp. Joey, nestled in her backpack at her feet, shivered slightly to the rhythm of her pulse, eyes sparkling as he observed every movement in the room. Ranger sat next to Daniel, seasoned eyes scanning everyone, alert for any sudden threats. The panel was fully assembled. Raymond and his brother, faces tense, sat in the front row. Pride still etched their expressions, yet their eyes flickered with tension as they looked toward Milka and Daniel. Lawyers on both sides were ready, documents and evidence neatly arranged on the tables. When the judge struck the gavel, the courtroom fell silent. Milka approached the podium and opened her files. She took a deep breath, eyes on Joey and Apollo, the little beings who had helped her gather the evidence. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady and precise. "I am veterinarian Milka Torres. I personally examined the condition of the dogs at Raymond Cole's camp. These records, false certificates, vaccination logs with incorrect dates, along with photographs and video recordings, show irregularities and dangers to the lives of these dogs." Milka presented each photo in detail: cramped cages, trembling dogs, matted fur, and signs of injury. Joey let out a soft whine in the backpack, but Milka felt the pup's strong heartbeat bolstering her resolve. Daniel stepped forward, projecting the video showing Ranger and Joey leading her into the hidden room where Apollo and the other dogs were confined. Every detail was clear and disputable. Raymond's eyes widened in alarm, his brother muttering but not daring to contest. "I confirm," Daniel said firmly, "that all of these actions were deliberate. The dogs were confined, deprived of food, neglected, and misused. Apollo is a canine, unlawfully held for forced breeding, posing direct harm." The judge nodded, taking careful notes. The air in the courtroom was taut, like a drawn bowstring. Joey, from beneath Milka's chair, lifted his eyes toward the opposite cages, where the dogs that had once been confined were now safe in a secure area. Though small, the little puppy seemed to understand that his efforts had helped other lives step into the light. The defense attorney tried to argue, emphasizing Raymond's experience in breeding dogs and familiarity with procedures. But every piece of evidence presented by Milka and Daniel rendered each defense futile. Cameras captured the empty cages files, and forged certificates displayed before the entire panel. "Even with your years of experience," Milka concluded, her voice sharp, "no expertise can justify neglecting or abusing living beings. We have proven that these acts were deliberate and caused serious harm." A moment of silence passed. The courtroom was still. Raymond glared at Milka, lips pressed tight, but no words came. His younger brother bowed his head, powerless before the overwhelming evidence. Joey, small but steadfast, stood before Milka, eyes shining like the light of justice. The judge struck the gavel, voice stern. Raymond Cole and his brother, Based on the evidence presented, this court sentences you to the maximum penalties under the law for animal abuse and illegal transport. Raymond will serve 8 years and his brother 6. Milka felt her heart sink, eyes brimming with tears. Joey nuzzled into her lap, ears pricked, sharing her relief and joy. Ranger, standing beside Daniel, finally relaxed after the tension of the entire trial, though his eyes still followed the hallway vigilantly. "We did it, Joey," Milka whispered gently, patting the puppy's back. "Everything has been proven. Justice has been served." Daniel held Milka's hand, eyes reflecting relief. "This little guy, Joey," he said, looking down at the tiny pup, "he gave us the strength to stand tall." Joey let out a soft bark, eyes gleaming as if confirming Daniel's words. Milka took a deep breath, glancing at all the dogs, recently rescued, now safely outside the courtroom. Her pulse slowly returned to normal. The tense hours were finally over. Milka felt joy and relief spreading through her, yet she knew their work wasn't finished. The dogs still needed healing care and true homes. Joey, though small, had completed his mission. He had been a guide, a lighthouse in the darkness, and a symbol of resilience. She gently held Joey, whispering, "We've won, but our journey isn't over." Sunlight from the window bathed Joey's face. His little eyes shone like reflections of faith and justice. Milka knew that from this moment on, every step she took would carry responsibility and hope for the small lives she had saved. The sunset spread over the small town, casting its glow on the golden winter fields. A soft breeze carried the scent of dry grass and damp earth, creating a rare sense of peace after so many tense days. Milka stood on the clinic porch, watching Joey run across the lawn, once fragile, now lively and strong. Joey darted through piles of leaves, ears perked, tail wagging with happiness, eyes shining with the joy of freedom. Milka smiled softly, her heart easing after long days of tension. She called Joey, but he only glanced back briefly before continuing his playful journey across small mounds of earth full of vitality. Nearby, Ranger lay on an old mat outside the clinic. Eyes closed, his aged body finally at ease after days of vigilant service. The old dog had fulfilled his role in protection, guidance, and alerting Milka and Daniel in every dangerous moment. Now he savored the calm, occasionally startled when Joey bounded near, but only lifting his head slightly, eyes reflecting quiet satisfaction. Apollo stood a few steps away, sleek coat gleaming, canine poise commanding. Milka knew the dog had fully regained his canine status. His emotional and physical wounds had healed, eyes bright and body strong, reflecting a true warrior. Daniel stood beside Apollo, hand on his shoulder, eyes full of pride and reassurance. Milka inhaled deeply, approaching Joey, resting her hand on his head. Joey leapt slightly, nuzzling into her lap, eyes small but brimming with trust and joy. She gently set him on the grass, and for the first time, Joey ran freely past Daniel and Ranger, weaving through the paths before the clinic, paws and soft barks blending into the peaceful air. "Look at him, Daniel," Milka said in a warm, hushed tone. "This little puppy has overcome everything, and now he's completely healthy." Daniel smiled, eyes following Joey. "Yes, he is the living symbol of resilience, not only surviving, but guiding us to justice." Milka held Joey's leash, stepping slowly across the grass. The sunset light fell on his glossy coat, each hair catching fire-like golden hues. Ranger remained beside her. Apollo stayed close to Daniel. The 3 dogs, small, aged, and majestic, formed a harmonious image, life, memory, and justice. Milka looked at Joey, round eyes bright, breathing, steady, spirit strong. She recalled sleepless nights, Joey trembling in her lap, those first unsteady steps. All of it had become a memorable journey, proving that perseverance and determination could overcome any challenge. "We did it, Joey," Milka whispered. We saved them all, and now it's time to enjoy what we've achieved. Joey leapt up, running circles around Milka, ears bouncing, tail wagging non-stop. Milka laughed softly, gently, patting his back, feeling peace spread throughout her. She knew that while more challenges lay ahead, this moment was a well-earned reward for all their efforts. Daniel stepped forward, placing his hand on Milka's shoulder, gaze warm and secure. "Joey, Ranger, and Apollo," he said, looking at the three dogs, then at Milka. "They helped us through everything. And through them, we understand the value of perseverance and courage." Milka nodded, eyes following Joey as he leapt over Apollo-circled Ranger, forming a living ring. The three dogs, each with a personality, a story, a role, stood together under the sunset light crowning the silent warriors. She walked slowly, Joey at her side, Daniel beside Apollo, Ranger trailing behind. The three dogs symbolized the journey through challenges. Each step on the grass, each steady breath affirmed that justice had been done, life protected, and the shadows of dark days no longer haunted them. "We've won, but there's still much to do," Milka whispered this time with a softer voice full of hope. Joey glanced at her eyes, seeming to say, "I'll always be with you." Together we move forward. Ranger sighed, lying down to bask in the sunlight. Apollo stood tall and proud, his sleek coat gleaming in the sunset, while Joey bounded across the yard, small but full of determination. The scene etched a deep conviction in Milka. No matter the trials they faced, they could always find light and life in the most fragile of beings. She paused, taking in the full view. The three dogs, Joey, Ranger, Apollo, stood together, each with a story, each with a purpose. Joey, the tiny but resilient soul Ranger, the embodiment of memory and experience Apollo, the symbol of justice and strength. These three icons had journeyed alongside Milka, guiding her through darkness and danger. Milka took a deep breath, leading Joey across the grassy field, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The sun slowly sank, painting the sky red, its radiant light falling upon the three dogs, emphasizing the life, memory, and justice they had just helped protect. "Go on, Joey," she whispered, caressing him tenderly. "We deserve this peace." Joey ran to Milka, leaping up to nuzzle into her arms, his eyes bright with trust and affection. Ranger followed closely behind, and Apollo stood tall beside Daniel. The three dogs remained there as living symbols of everything they had fought to protect: life, fairness, and enduring memory. In that moment, Milka realized that the journey of saving these dogs was more than just a professional mission. It was a lesson in courage, perseverance, and the value of life itself. Joey, though small, had become a guiding flame, the heartbeat of a new journey that she and Daniel would continue together. The story of Joey, the small yet courageous German shepherd alongside Milka and Daniel, is a vivid testament that love and persistence can overcome any obstacle. From those early days when Joey was just a trembling little soul in Milka's arms, through her dedicated care, he had grown into a guiding light for both humans and other abandoned dogs. The German shepherd, a breed intelligent, loyal, and brave, once again proved its extraordinary value. Joey was not just a symbol of survival. He was an inspiration, reminding us of the power of patience, empathy, and the spirit of protecting the vulnerable. Ranger, seasoned and wise. Apollo, the formidable K9, and little Joey. They existed together as icons of life, memory, and justice, showing that every being has its own worth and deserves to be cherished. The message of this story extends beyond rescue or legal battles. It is a reminder of humanity's responsibility toward animals, of respecting, caring for, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Milka's steadfastness, Daniel's bravery, and Joey's fighting spirit prove that love is never wasted. It can transform lives, bringing hope and peace to the vulnerable. Let this story remind us of the value of compassion, of kindness to animals, and of the belief that every small action, A gentle touch, a word of care, or a quiet act of courage can make a difference. Joey, with his tiny heart and extraordinary determination, has shown that love and perseverance are the guiding flames, lighting the way for both humans and dogs through the darkness of trials.